Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to Strong Inside and Out, the place where you always get that nugget of information that helps you be a strong woman on the inside and out. And can you believe it's the last week of February? I just can't. The year is flying by. So many things. And I feel like every day has just been moving so quickly. I spent this week at my 9 to 5 job overseeing state assessments. So it just totally drained me. I am telling you, when I say there's no tired like um, school administrator tired during state assessment time, teacher tired during that time. It's just like no other. And also student tired. So if you're out there listening, you're a parent or you know somebody that's in the world of education, love on them a little bit during those weeks of assessments because they wipe us out. Everything went very, very well. I did make a comment that I guess was a little bit princess-like this week because someone did say, you really are a princess, but we have to be audited during the week of testing, right? So somebody from our district level has to come over and be sure that everything is going smoothly. It's just a requirement from the state. I live in Texas, so if you know anything about state assessments in Texas, you know. But they came over, and of course, we had 100% on the audit. And my school leader had asked the audit person, so is this the norm? And they said, no, you all have been the best. And afterwards, she gives me a high five and she's like, thank you for making me look so good. And I said, I'm just a little bit concerned though, because I shouldn't be the exception. This should be the norm. So, I think there's still work to do out there in the world where we continue to show up as our best selves. And if you listen to the podcast a couple of weeks ago, either within Strong Inside and Out or leadership lessons, I spoke about that, having a plan for success, being able to show up as your best self, because I just always step back and think, and it's not about making mistakes. We all make mistakes as humans, right? But I step back and think when we're not striving for excellence, we're affecting so many people because that ripple effect is going to happen. And when you're talking about the world of education, the medical world, I think any organization, the effects can be so detrimental to people out there. And so I truly, truly stand on that whole belief of if we're going to do something, let's do it with excellence because yeah, it's just too important in the world. So anyway, that's my soapbox for today. Having said that, though, great things have been progressing along with my newest project. I know I've shared with you here, but I met with the Texas Education Agency people the last week of January. And I have decided to move forward on developing a new program that I will be applying for acceptance with the state for an alternative certification program for teachers. I'm really excited about this because I do always feel like when I made the decision at 6 years old to become a teacher, but more importantly, even after becoming a teenage mother and having to work hard to put myself through school and having to make a lot of sacrifices to ensure that I could get my college degree and take care of my family. And then to move up into the world of education from teacher into school leader, I felt the burning desire that one day I would be doing something that prepared teachers differently. I didn't know exactly what that was. About 10 years ago, I did tell a colleague that this could possibly be the answer. And, things happen at a certain time in your life and for certain reasons. And this fell into my lap specifically at a time in my world where I was looking for that next piece of what I do in my leadership. And so, yeah, I'm excited. I have now formed my advisory board, which was step number one. I have developed a name and a logo and committed my intent with the state. I have started researching office space because you do have to have an outside office. You can't have a home office for that. So I've done that research. I have a domain now for my website when the time comes for that. And I wanted to get that early so the name wouldn't be taken. And I got almost exactly what I wanted. So that feels good. And now I'm actually ready to start writing the application, the pieces to everything. So yeah, it's very exciting. Having said that, here we are back for another episode in the series of building your best life. And this aligns with, if you haven't been listening, my TEDx talk, I should say, that I gave on February 1st. That one was specifically for educators. But the philosophy of the 5 main points really translates into things we do within our own personal lives. And of course, on Wednesdays, I adjust it to fit into the world of leadership. And this week, I had kind of warned everyone, the conversation for this week really was specific for teachers. It's about classroom management. And you're listening because you're not here to learn about being a teacher. You're here to learn about being a strong woman. And as I had been processing through all of this, I kept thinking, how am I going to adjust this to just everyday lives? What we do to be our very best version of ourselves. And it hit me as I was out walking the dog the other morning, exactly how this translates. And it's about management of ourselves, management of our homes, management of our people. And it's crucial. It's so crucial. So let's dive in and see how this week's episode goes. All right, y'all. So management. Let's talk about management for a minute. When we think about how we manage things, I think about managers being people who look at numbers and data and checklists and things, right? When I manage my finances, for example, I think about how I sit down and write a budget. And then I know what my reoccurring payments are. And I set up a system to ensure that they get paid on time. And then I sit down and I figure out how much money I'm going to have left over. And then I develop a system on how much I should save and how much I can go have fun with and all of the things. And even when I was thinking about building my house, I had to have a very specific system for how I was going to organize my down payment and get all that money put together. And then how I was going to take care of the other types of fees, right? The inspections and the titles and the little reoccurring fees that happen when you're building a home. And then I had to think about, okay, if I wanted to go upgrade any of the things within my home, which of course I am a princess, so I wanted to do that. I needed to have a system for how I was going to determine which were the A-list things that I absolutely needed to upgrade, and then what were the B-list things that if I had some additional money, those would be the things that I definitely would want to have and how I prioritize those. And then, of course, I had to think about all my other spending because when you're in this process of building a home and you're securing a loan, especially in 2019, well, it was 2021 when I actually purchased, but you're thinking about you can't spend money, you can't go buy, things that you would typically buy. And I was wanting to buy a new car, but I knew I couldn't buy the new car while I was still in the process because that would, affect my credit. And, so you have to think about all the managerial things in life. And then I think about people that I've met over the years, especially when I was in a different place in life. When my daughter was still at home, my daughter, and I spoke about this last week when we spoke about running your day. She was involved in a lot of things. I was involved in a lot of things. My ex-husband was involved in things when we were still together as a family. And then even when it was just her and we had to learn how to manage all of that. I spoke about running your day, about your schedules and your things, but then you have to think about the management pieces of things, right? So for example, when she went off to college, I had to be able to manage when I was putting money onto her accounts at her college because she needed food, right? Or she needed supplies for her classes. I needed to make sure I had a system for monitoring the money she was spending so that we weren't going overdrawn in our accounts for her, right? And then I had to have a plan for how we were paying the monthly bill for the actual college tuition because we didn't take out a bunch of loans for that. We were just paying out of pocket. There was a lot to it. And then we had to manage things like, okay, when are we going to go visit? Because she was 3 hours away and make it work within all of the schedules and everything. Those are things that you think about when you manage. But then I also know that as she was going through middle school and high school and getting much more involved in things, and I was working on my master's and moving into school leadership and had more limited time, but still wanted to do all of the things for her. I would hear a lot of my friends talk about, I just don't know how you do it. And I would always say, because I run my day, but I think it was even more than that. It was about managing my people. Now, we had a marriage when I was married that I was definitely the person that kept everything together. My ex-husband, he was there, and I can't say that he was a bad guy all the time. So I guess that's a kudos to him. But it was clear that I was the one that organized everything, organized the holidays, organized the parties on the weekends, organized trips, organized visits back home, organized our finances, organized everything. It was up to me. And people clearly then noticed that because then they would say, how do you do it? And it was about keeping everything in check because I know there was a point, I actually was able to travel to Boston one summer to go do work at Harvard University, and I had to be away from my home. And that was that was in 2008. So it wasn't a time where we had Zoom and all of the things, the commodities we have now, I guess I would say after COVID, right? This was way pre-COVID and the connection pieces were not there. Of course, we had phones and things, but even our phones were different in 2008. And I remember coming back from that, being away, and things were falling apart. Things had not gotten done. There were no groceries in the house. Our daughter spent most of her time with her friends and her grandparents, and it had become chaos because I wasn't there to keep everything together. Now, looking back on that, is that the way I would do something now if I were to go into another type of relationship? Absolutely not, because to be honest, it was exhausting, but it was what was needed at the time. And if I liken it to anything when it comes to classroom management, I can definitely say my first year of teaching, I was horrible. And it wasn't because I didn't know how to teach. I knew how to teach. It was because I didn't have a system to manage everything that was going on in my classroom. I didn't have a system for grading work. So students were receiving their feedback very late. Parents weren't getting graded papers back, making them upset. Then they were questioning me. I was behind on other types of things that were due just in the everyday life of being a teacher. My students would come in each morning not knowing what was going to be going on for the day because I wasn't organized enough to where I was able to say, all right, this is our clear structure. This is what our schedule looks like every day. This is what you can expect. And then I didn't even have a system for how to communicate any of that out. It was a rough year. And when I think about people that come into my world now who want to work with me, who need support, who have conversations with me, I can see where the breakdown comes in. And a lot of it is about managing the systems in our lives. Even this week, I mentioned it was state assessment week. I was on my feet all day for the entire day, very stressful situations, taking care of all of the things, ensuring that testing was being done right, plus taking care of other duties. Sure, my principal protected me. She did a great job with that. So it wasn't about that, but it was just about those are busy times. And I got home each day. I tutor students in the evening for my business. I got home, did my tutoring, and I'm telling you, I was exhausted. I didn't follow my systems for working out. So by Friday, I was feeling it. I was feeling sluggish. I was feeling like I was hitting the wall. I was feeling a little bit grouchy because I didn't have that outlet to get the stress out. I was feeling bloated, and I have these issues with myself, but feeling a little chubby, chunky, and a little out of sorts with myself. I hadn't gained weight or anything, but it was just that feeling when you're so used to something being. Ooh, I'm so sorry. It is cold out. We have the heat on, and the heat makes me sneeze, so I do apologize. But nonetheless, my system was out of whack. And then it like affects so many other things. In my talk, when it's available, I'll be sure to link it and all of the things. But in my talk, I talk about how I even had a conversation with a teacher who was struggling so much with her classroom management. And we had tried so many different things. And of course, you're going to have skill and you're going to have will. And I'm not sure if this teacher really truly had will. She didn't end up staying with me, but during a conversation that we had, we started talking about her car. And I brought that up because think about your car. You get notifications every thousands of miles, right? Mine is 5,000, that you need to go get the oil changed. It's a routine thing that many of us hate doing, right? Taking time out of our day, spending the money to go do it, and all of the things. But we know we need to do it. Why do we need to do it? We need to do it because if the oil runs out, it can cause other things to go bad on your car, and eventually your car will break down. And as I was talking to her about her classroom, I would say to her, you're spending so much time developing amazing lessons. Like, I know if a student was in your classroom and it was a calm place where they could hear you and they were engaged in the learning, they would actually learn. However, the classroom wasn't a calm place. And she wasn't doing the maintenance. She had spent the time developing the system for her management, but then she wasn't changing the oil in it. She wasn't taking care of it. She wasn't putting gas into her car. It was there. It was lovely. It was actually a good system. She worked with a mentor. She was a pretty new teacher, but then she didn't maintain that system. And once she didn't maintain it, it fell apart. And by the end of the year, her students hadn't grown. And the conversation had to completely change because then we had to talk about what kind of value have you given. So let's think about this within your own world right now. You are listening to this series because you want to be a strong woman. You're listening to this series because you may be on a quest to develop a life you love, one that you are excited about waking up to every day. I know it's really hard to get excited about something if you're waking up every day to only put out fires. I know it's hard to wake up every day and be motivated to go out and do the necessary things to make change in your life, whether it's losing weight, whether it's going back to school, whether it's searching for a new job, whether it's working on whatever it is that you're striving for. It feels impossible when you've got all these stressors of all of the other chaos that's going on in your world. A student came up to me the other day and said, "Can you hold this?" And I said, "Sure." And she plops down on the floor and she empties her entire backpack. And I said, "Wow, you have a lot going on in that backpack. I'm thinking that maybe tonight you should go home and clean it out. Have you cleaned your backpack out since you started school this year?" And she said, "No, but honestly, it's my chaotic mess." And she's a very bright student. And I said, "Okay, I understand that, but clearly you're not finding things. You're having to dump everything out on the floor to find one thing, and then you're shoving everything back in. It was a chaotic mess. But then she said, but it's my mess. And I said, I get that it's your mess, but it's my job as a teacher to give you support so that you can better your life. And think about how much better your life will be if you could just reach into your backpack and pull out whatever you wanted, because you could actually see what's happening in there. How many of you, life is like that backpack right now? That in order to actually make a change, or in order to actually do something you want to do, in order to actually find the things in your life that light you up, you have to dump the entire backpack out before you can find that one little thing. And by the time you dump it out, do the search, put all the things back, is that one little thing even worth it? Do you have the energy to implement? I don't know. I'm not in your shoes, but I think these are things that we need to ask ourselves. So as we progress through this series and we are building a life that we want to wake up to every day, what are some of my biggest tips? I think we have to, number one, get real with where we are. And we have to be honest with ourselves. If in the back of your mind, you're sitting there going, wow, I don't even think I can consider doing that because it's just too exhausting. Clearly, we got to make a change. And if you're in the back of your mind thinking, no, I can handle this, I got it all. But at the end of the day, you're so exhausted that you can't show up for everybody else. And you wake up the next day going, gosh, I got to do this again. Those are the thoughts we need to really listen to and say, okay, it's time. It's time to make some adjustments. And y'all, they might not need to be huge adjustments. It might just be the mere fact of cleaning out your backpack. Something small and simple. I'm all about simple. And I'm all about, no matter what work I do, personally or professionally, finding the biggest lever things that are going to be implemented the easiest so that you can actually feel the change. And that's step number two. Once you get real with yourself, and once you really say, okay, yeah, I need to do something different, then we figure out what that something different is. I've said this several times on the podcast. When it comes to any kind of change, you start small, but small doesn't necessarily, it's not going to have a huge impact. You start with one thing that can totally change so much. The first thing that I always did walking into a school that I was doing a turnaround with was to look at what was happening with the student behavior system in the building. I had a system that I had developed years and years ago with input from so many great mentors that worked. And it worked because it was simple, it was easy to communicate, and it was something that was going to be a high lever. As soon as my teachers started to see that it made a difference with management of students, with the climate and culture of the building, which it did all of that, in addition to supporting their work with all the lesson planning and instructional planning that they had done, it was breeding more success. We have to do that in our personal lives as well. Y'all, I went through a period of time when I first moved to Houston where I gained a lot of weight. I'd been a PE major in college. I was always running. I was always working out. I was always busy. My ex-husband and I both, we did a lot of bike riding. We did a lot of sporting kinds of activities. I got to Houston and I was working all the time. I was taking care of everything. I was driving an hour each way to and from work. And I was overwhelmed with my workload. And when I had to determine my priorities, My daughter, my family, my work was a priority, and I let my health and exercise go to the side. About a year later, I was like, okay, not only am I miserable with my job, but I'm also miserable with myself. I was getting sick. I was gaining weight, and I gained a lot of weight. I wouldn't hesitate to say 20 to 30 pounds. I don't get on scales, so that's another thing. But I gained a lot of weight, and I had to go up several clothes sizes, several, like six. I gained weight. And then I saw a picture of myself and I was like, oh, Lordy, I need to do something different, right? But I knew that I still had a busy schedule. I knew I was still driving a lot. I knew that my daughter was now going into the first grade and was still going to need my support. I knew that I was still learning how to, I had started developing systems at my work, but I wasn't an expert yet. They weren't automatic yet. So I had to figure out what we were going to do first. Now, I will tell you, the first thing we did was we started grocery shopping and we didn't have McDonald's every night. And immediately I lost 15 pounds. Just the mere fact of not having fast food every night. And then I started to feel a little bit better about that, which then started me on this quest of, okay, now let's figure out how we get back into working out. How do we get back to being a runner? How do we get back to doing all of the things? But I felt that big release immediately. And I was able to say, okay, I can do this. I can handle this. That's not so hard. So what's next? And then finally, as we wrap up, I do always, always want to remind us we're human. We're never going to be perfect. We're going to have slips. Don't beat yourself up about it. And more importantly, and this sounds so cliche, but when you fall off the wagon, so to speak, most people stay down on the ground. But here's the funny thing. If you think about a wagon, my image of a wagon is it's being pulled by horses, and typically it's not moving super fast. We can get up, we can chase that wagon, and we can get back on, right? It's not like you're on a jet or in a fast moving car. We can get back on. But we can't get back on if we're totally beating ourselves up and just thinking that we're a loser and there's never going to be a way that we keep changing and we totally give up. Because in my opinion, that's the only time we ever fail is when we just quit, when we just give up. All right, hopefully this all translated into things that can be helpful for you as you're building the life you love. But management of ourselves, of the people around us, of our systems, our processes in our personal life. It's huge. If you know your why and you have a plan to show up as your most successful self that you actually execute, you run your day by scheduling and planning things out and not leaving things to chance. And you manage those systems, whatever they are, you're going to be on a path to really start to see huge things happening for you. I know it. I've been there. Next week, we're going to wrap up with self-care, which of course is like the cherry on top of the cupcake, right? So to speak. And I'm excited for that one. And stay tuned for tomorrow's podcast as well, because I take this concept and talk about how it translates into leadership. And if you're a leader and you want more tips on that, definitely connect. And finally, I hope you have a great week. It's the last week of February. Go make big things happen before we get into March. Weather is starting to change a little bit, but wow, that groundhog sure was right this year, right? Because we're even cold here in Houston. But most importantly, just enjoy your life. Find something that lights you up this week. And if you feel like something within this week's episode resonated and somebody in your world might need to hear it, please share it out. I appreciate that more than you will ever know. All right, have a great rest of your week, and I'll see you all right back here on Strong Inside and Out.